Hey Siri, what's the temperature, please?
It's about 28 degrees outside.
Thank you, Siri. Hey everybody! In today's video, we look at Tony Northrop's allegations that the Fujifilm X-T4 is flawed because it overheats when used in video mode. So if you are thinking about buying the Fujifilm X-T4, I'm going to tell you everything there is to know about the X-T4 when it comes to overheating. I will put every card on the table and we will discuss what this actually means in real-life situations. Now, I want this channel to be first and foremost about sharing and being useful to the people who watch it, but I would be remiss if I would not share with you what I personally think is going on Tony's channel as far as the X-T4 is concerned. If you don't care about this drama, I will put a timestamp on the screen somewhere around here, so jump directly to this timestamp to get to the point where I will discuss in details pure information about the Fujifilm X-T4. But if you don't mind a little bit of entertainment along the way, stick with me for a moment because I'm about to spill some really good tea. Okay, if you're still here, let me sum up the Tony Northrop's drama very briefly. It all starts with Canon releasing the EOS R5 and EOS R6. So Canon released these two new cameras and they give them to paid ambassadors to create content that will serve as advertisement for the two new bodies. But Tony did not get the camera. And he went all the way making a video explaining that it was because he was an independent reviewer. And as an independent reviewer, only him could tell you the truth about the value of a new product. But the truth is, we are right now in a COVID-19 environment. So Canon could not wine and dine YouTubers the same way they did when they launched the EOS R. Because today, Tony tells you is all about ethics and being independent. But when Canon launched the EOS R, he was flown to Hawaii by Canon with all expenses paid to cover the launch of the new body. I let you be the judges of how independent that is. So poor Tony did not get his hands early on the R5 and R6, and while people who got access to the R5 and R6 are releasing their video about these new cameras, Tony actually releases a review of the Fujifilm X-T4. If you were to start watching this X-T4 review, you would think this looks like a very fair and balanced review. It starts with his wife, Chelsea, taking pictures with the X-T4 in very various situations. Along the way, she tells us what she likes and what she doesn't like, which is very typical for a review. However, this is when treacherous Tony intervenes right at the end of the video. According to him, the Fujifilm X-T4 overheats when shooting video. This leads to an abrupt conclusion that this camera is unusable, while his wife has been using it without any issue during the 90% of the video. Where the treachery comes in is when you look at the thumbnail of the video, all you can see is warning, this camera overheats. And if you look at the title of the video, it says the X-T4 is flawed in all caps, overheating, which clearly doesn't reflect the content of the review. If you are a potential buyer of the X-T4 and you see that, you're probably going to be scared and look for another camera. And that's where a shady review becomes even shadier, because what is the conclusion that Tony makes? The X-T4 overheats, so instead of buying it, why don't you buy a used X-T3? And it just so happens that this entire video is sponsored by a website selling used gear. And all of this manipulation is happening in the middle of the Canon overheating drama when a lot of people are searching for information about these overheating issues. Now, Your Honor, I rest my case and I let you make your own mind about that. Anyway, enough talked about Tony. Let's leave the Tonehverse behind and talk about the Fujifilm X-T4. If you have jumped directly to this timestamp, welcome back. And just so you know, you've just missed all the fun. So is the Fujifilm X-T4 overheating or not? Like a lot of issues, it all comes down to KYG. Know your gear. The first thing to understand is that the more you push the processor of any camera to its limit, the more it's going to generate hits. It's not a flaw of the camera, it's just the laws of physics. And you are probably already very familiar with that. For example, if you use your laptop to browse internet, everything is probably looking normal. However, as soon as you launch a program that is more intensive than your internet browser, so for example, if you start editing some video in Adobe Premiere, you will soon feel that your laptop is becoming hot and you will hear the cooling fans working very, very hard. Well, it is the same thing with your camera. As Uncle Ben once said, with great power comes great heat, or something like that. What you need to understand is that if you shoot in 4K 60p, you are going to push the processor inside of your camera much further than if you are shooting in 1080p at 24 frames per second, for example. This means that 4K 60p is going to generate much more heat, and therefore there is a higher risk of overheating. To counter that, you could, for example, add bigger thermal sinks, or you could put some huge cooling fans in the body. It's a hardware design decision. So it all comes down to what sort of camera you're trying to build. In the case of the Fujifilm X-T4, we are talking about a hybrid camera meant to shoot both stills and video. So you need to find the right balance. But there's not a unique answer to this question. There is no right or wrong answer. It really depends on what you're trying to do. So what is Fujifilm trying to do with the X-T4? Before we go further than that, let's have a look at what the Fujifilm X-T4 user manual is saying about video recording time limit. According to the user manual, you can shoot in DCI 4K or 4K at 60p up to approximately 20 minutes. So it's written in the manual, up to approximately 20 minutes. And the manual also goes on to state that in case of shooting under high temperature and/or repeated shootings, the recording time can become shorter. Do you really think that this 20-minute recording time limit is a random number? Hey Joe, how many tequila shots can you drink in a row before passing out? Okay, so the answer is 20 minutes. Because it's not. 4K 60p, as I said, is the most intensive usage of your camera's processor, and the design choices that were made when creating the X-T4 all led towards a 20-minute limit. You could make a bigger camera with more thermal sink or with cooling fans that would have a longer recording time limit. But it's not the form factor that has been applied to the X-T4, so it's important to understand that. What is the type of camera we are trying to make, and what are the consequences down the line? At that point, I ran some tests with the X-T4 to make sure that this 20 minutes limit was in fact achievable by the camera. I shot in 4K 60p with my X-T4 on my balcony. The average temperature during the test I conducted was around 30 degrees Celsius, which is not crazy hot for a summer day, but is, in the grand scheme of things, already on the odd side of things. The X-T4 was able to shoot for 20 minutes as advertised. At the end of these 20 minutes, there was a warning message asking me to turn off the camera to allow it to cool down. If you just turn off and on the camera at that point, without letting it cool down, you can film for an additional few minutes, but usually no more than 5. At that point, I turned off the camera and let it rest for 30 minutes on my balcony. I did not put it in the fridge. I did not put some ice pack around it to help it cool down. I just left it on my balcony with an average temperature of around 30 degrees Celsius for about 30 minutes. I then reran the test. I filmed again in 4K 60p. This time the X-T4 filmed for around 19 minutes and a half. And then I got the same message asking to turn off the camera so that it could cool down. So I did it another time. I turned off the camera and I let it for an additional 30 minutes on my balcony to rest at ambient temperature. And I tried again. I filmed again in 4K 60p. This time the camera filmed again for 20 minutes and displayed the overheating message asking to turn off the camera and let it cool down. I think you see the pattern here. So let's recap a few points about 4K 60p. Number 1, 4K 60p is going to be the trickiest shooting mode for your camera. It's going to be the most intensive on the processor. Number 2, during my tests at around 30 degrees Celsius of ambient temperature, I was able to get the 20 minutes of recording time that are advertised in the user manual. Of course, your own mileage may vary depending on temperature and depending on what you've been shooting so far with the camera. If you've been using the camera very intensively before doing a recording in 4K 60p, this is also very likely to reduce the maximum time that you will be able to record in this mode. Number 3, if you turn off your camera for 30 minutes, you are able to shoot for another 20 minutes. There again, your mileage may vary. Number 4, these results apply to both H.265 and H.264. The H.264 codec is usually less intensive on your processor, so I did run the test as well using H.264 instead of H.265, and the camera's body does get a little bit less warm than if you're using H.265, but in terms of shooting time, you get very similar results. Number 5, no footage was lost. And to me, this is the big distinction between something that is working as intended with its own set of limitations and something that is actually flawed. Those points pretty much sum up what you need to know about shooting in 4K 60p with the Fujifilm X-T4. The camera is not flawed, like Tony Northrop is saying. That's completely fake news, but at the same time, it was not designed to record hours and hours of content at 4K 60p. But keep in mind, 4K 60p is the most intensive shooting mode for your processor. What happens when you shoot in 4K at 24p, 25p, or 30p? I ran the same test and the results were very interesting. First, let's look at the user manual once again. According to the manual, you can shoot in DCI 4K or 4K at 24p, 25p, or 30p up to approximately 30 minutes. Obviously, once again, this 30 minutes is not a random number, but this time it's an arbitrary limit that is related to an EU tariff on camcorders that doesn't even exist anymore. Let's look at the results of the test. Again, I put my camera on the balcony with still an exterior temperature of around 30 degrees Celsius, and I filmed in 4K 30p to see what would be the recording limit. As we have noted in the user manual, there is a 30-minute limit of recording time, but this time it's more a software limit than a hardware limit. I started the first test filming in 4K 30p, and the camera was able to film for the whole 30 minutes. Even at the end of these 30 minutes, there was no overheating warning or overheating message. So this time, I did not let the camera rest on the balcony for 30 minutes. I directly started to film again for another 30 minutes. I got very similar results. The camera filmed for the whole 30 minutes. I did not get any overheating warning, nor any kind of overheating message. So what did I do? I did not let the camera rest. Directly after these 30 minutes, I again started to film in 4K 30p. This time again, the camera filmed for the whole 30 minutes. No overheating message, no overheating warning, nothing at all. I think you see the pattern. If you are shooting in 4K up to 30p, so 4K 24p, 25p, and 30p, there is a 30-minute recording limit, but this time this is purely a software limit. As long as you start recording again after these 30 minutes, you can virtually film in 4K up to 30p for an unlimited time. And to be clear, there is no overheating concern. So I don't know what is your style of shooting, but I know that myself, I never film in 4K 60p for an extended period of time. And that's why as an X-T4 user, I had never experienced any kind of overheating issue. My favorite way of filming is to do a main timeline in 24p, and that means you can still use clips that you have shot at 60p to spice up your main timeline with some slow motion clips for your B-roll, for example. And once you understand all of this, you can really create some amazing videos with your X-T4. So don't let yourself be tricked by what Tony Northrop is saying on this video, because you would be missing out on a very amazing hybrid camera. Don't forget, it's more important to KYG, know your gear, than to watch every review that you will find on YouTube. Anyway, that's all I had for you today. I hope this video brought you the information you needed for your purchase decision. And if it did, please leave a thumbs up so that the YouTube algorithm knows that it can recommend this video to other people looking for the same type of information. I'll see you soon for another video. And until then, take care. Fujifilm, please, can you fix Tony via firmware update? That's some really good tea, love.